Okay.
We did it.
Are people ready? Yeah, anyways, today we're going to talk about idea generation. When you guys submitted your applications, you all had an idea, right? So you may continue with the idea, or you may watch this lecture and then refine it. But it's just a bunch of, I guess, lessons that we've taken over the last 2 years, maybe as a team, looking at different startups, or and it's also learnings from YC and everything. So I've sort of condensed it into a mini lecture. Okay, next slide. Thanks. So startups are like making stone soup, and what I mean by that is it's a fable that my philosophy teacher told me. So this is back in, like, think of war times. Soldiers are hungry, but they need to eat. And one time there were soldiers in this French town, and like going to this village and sort of asking the villagers for food. And the villagers, over time, they've learned to not give them food because they will literally steal everything, and they have no power because they have guns and everything. But the soldiers, again, this time also went to visit every single household and, hey, looking for food. And the villagers like, no, I don't have anything. Look at me, I'm already this poor. I don't have any food to give you. So what they did is go outside, find a pot, put some stones in it, fill it with water, and started cooking a pot of stone. They call it a stone soup. And the villagers are also, they're poor. They looked over to the soldiers and they're like, hey, what are you cooking? This is it's just stones. What are you? This is not edible. And the soldiers are like, it is. We're gonna show you, but to make it really good, we're gonna need a little bit of say a few sausages or something. And the villagers are like, oh, I have that. I'll bring it over, put it into the soup. And then 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, it would be really great with some salt and pepper and maybe chicken or something like that. And then the villager's like, oh, okay, I have that too. So every household brought something over into their own soup, and eventually it became an actual soup. So the idea behind that is start with something, be scrappy. That's the next lecture. Start with nothing. You can start with nothing, literally use stones, and make it into a natural soup. And with different building blocks, different ingredients, you can make your idea and sort of your concept come true. So, all right, next. So today's agenda is talking about how to generate the idea, how to evaluate your ideas, and then finally, what's next once you have your idea. Yeah. So I guess these are some of the questions that might come up when you're thinking about generating your idea. So obviously, I don't have an idea. What do I like to do? What's a good idea? What's a bad idea? What's a hot idea? Today it's AI, right? You think of agents and robots who take phone calls. These are hot ideas. Are those worth pursuing? Yeah. So our approach, we kind of thought about it in two ways. So approach one, which we recommend, is to listen to your own needs and interests. So think about something you personally want to see in the world that you would personally derive some value, positive value out of. Say, like, for me personally, like, I'm a photographer. I want to sort of streamline my workflow and maybe add a little bit of AI into my workflow to make repetitive tasks really easy, and do it in a really quick manner. So that's something that I would personally derive a lot of positive value out of. So I call this approach sort of like a need-based approach. The other is, more like business opportunity, right? You spot an opportunity in the industry and think of ways to capture it. It's somewhat harder because it would be better suited if you had industry knowledge and working experience. You can think of, I have the next slide. There's gonna be a couple videos later on that I'll show you. All right, so when you're generating your idea, there are some things to be aware of. Paul Graham, who's the founder of YC, he talks about how don't solve a problem that doesn't really exist. This points to the second approach that we talked about. Here's a quote from him. in 1995, he started a company to put art galleries online. But galleries didn't want to be online, and that's not how the art business works. So he spent 6 months working on this stupid idea. And why? Because he didn't pay attention to users. He invented a model of the world that didn't correspond to reality and work from that. So he didn't notice that his model was wrong until he tried to convince users to pay what he had built. And that's the wrong way of approaching this, is to have the idea in your head and then building it directly from your head and not talking to anyone. So and when you do have ideas, we don't. There's a very special gallery of ideas that's been tried but failed every single time, and they're called tar pit ideas. So you may hear about, like, oh, it's so hard to meet up with my friends on the weekends. Like, can we make an app to, like, I don't know, sync everyone's schedules and find a time to meet up? Like, that is the classic tar pit idea. And it's not that they're bad ideas. It's just like it's not necessarily impossible. It's just that these are common ideas, and it's much harder than it seems. If you are pursuing it, I would recommend talking to someone about it, or just Google the idea. People have probably built in the past, and it's just faded away in the internet. When you're thinking about your ideas, think of them as starting points. So as you talk to your users, as you gain more inspiration online, they're going to morph into something that's much better and much bigger with time. And also, you can think about it from a probability standpoint. So things that are really obvious are probably already solved, or it's not really a problem. So you have to be sort of, there have to be at least some users who really need what you're making. So not just people who could see themselves using it for just one day, but who want it really urgently. And usually this initial group of users is small for the simple reason that if there were something that large numbers of people who urgently needed it, and that could be built with the amount of effort a startup usually puts into version 1, it probably already exists. So when you're building your idea, just be careful of not chasing something that's really, really obvious, and try to capture the group of people who would use it and would love the idea. It would urgently solve something that they need, and they would use anything to solve that. So can you play from 348 to 515? You just click on it once, and then drag to 348. This is approach number 1 that we talked about. So something that you personally would derive a lot of value from, and like a sort of a need-based approach.
I can change the world, and you're not doing that. And so I had this impulsive moment where I go to work, and my roommate, or my going to start a company. We had no idea what this company was going to be. We just thought, we'll think of the big idea. And so one day, I go to work, I quit my job, and living in a house with a bunch of friends that moved across the country with me, and I say, okay guys, I'm going to leave. And they thought I had like an early life crisis. They thought like they need to have intervention, but no, I'm fine. And I took some old foam mattress, I rolled it up in the backseat of an old Honda Civic, and with $1,000 in the bank, I drive up to San Francisco. This is October 2007. I get to San Francisco, and Joe tells me the rent is $1,150. I didn't have enough money for rent. That weekend, this international design conference was coming to San Francisco. We went to this conference website, and we noticed in the conference website they had like a hotels tab. We clicked on the hotels tab, and in the hotels tab there are always hotels, and next to every hotel said sold out, sold out, sold out. And at that point, we just had this idea. We said, well, designers need a place to stay. We literally have no money. In fact, I don't know how I'm going to make rent. So we thought, what if we just created a bed and breakfast for the design conference? Naturally, that's maybe not what most of you think to do, but that's what we thought to do. Go to RISD, you're like, you got to create a solution. So we thought, let's create a designer bed and breakfast for the conference. Unfortunately, I didn't have any beds. Joe I just moved up there. It would be like a floor and breakfast. That's like not the best thing. And so Joe had 3 air beds. He had gone camping and he had kept some air beds. And we pulled the air beds out of the closet. We inflated the air beds and we called it the air bed and breakfast.
Okay, that's good.
And that's where the name comes.
Yeah. In case, I don't know if people have seen that video before, but that's how Airbnb came about. It's literally air beds and breakfast. They needed money. So it's a need-based approach. You can approach building your ideas like that. Next one. So this is before. Tarek is the founder of Kalshi. He was a trader at Goldman and Citadel before he started the company, and he noticed something about trading that's similar across like all the companies that he worked for, and he came up with this idea.
When people think about founder, they always think it's better, like being your own boss, etc., is better than territories. A lot of trading activity right now stems from an opinion on event. In some ways, all trading is event-driven trading. So you think that COVID is going to go worse or better, and you go buy a Marriott stock. So a lot of it is actually driven by events. A lot of trading is actually event-driven trading. And this is what the core insight early on. It's like, why do we need to use another asset to trade on the event? What if we just took the event and created an event contract, a tradable asset that's directly tied to the event? And that was really the core insight. It's like, if all trading activity if all traditional financial instruments, the activity there is actually event-driven, what if we just created a financial instrument that is the event itself, the event contract, which would be the most elegant formulation of that trade? I think that was...
Yeah, so in his example, he noticed something that event trading was basically, he thought that it wasn't necessary to use all these complex instruments to basically trade on essentially what was the future events. So he made the platform to trade on future events. Cool. Now we move on to evaluating the idea. So we talked briefly about if you should pursue the hot idea of the time, maybe of this year, versus something that you actually want to. Here's something that's interesting. So in 2022, the hot theme of the year was the metaverse, and the most valuable company started was Perplexity, which some of you may use. 2021, that was Web3, and then Anthropic was started that year. You go on, so like, I don't know if you know some of these ideas. 2015, autonomous vehicles were the hot thing, and then OpenAI was started that year. Canva, 2013 was wearables, and then Canva was started that year. So again, it's about, like I said, using those two approaches, taking your past experiences and applying it into something new, restructuring different ideas, your past experiences into innovation, and not, like, this basically shows that chasing the hot thing won't necessarily get you anywhere. Yeah, we're gonna go through some of these sort of driving questions. So I think timing is a pretty important factor in terms of finding which idea to start. So Mark Andreessen, who's the founder of the first internet browser and the VC firm A16Z, he once said that there are no bad ideas in tech, just bad timing. Most people, they intuitively get the importance of why now for a startup, but it doesn't always get the attention that it should get. So you can see that like Webvan was a grocery delivery business that raised more than $400 million over 3 years before going bankrupt in 2001. And fast forward to today, Instacart and others have brought the same vision to life with great success. Cosmo, I guess, promised 1 hour delivery of food and other items when it launched in 1998. The company raised $250 million, but shut down 3 years later. So today, you have DoorDash, you have Uber Eats, and GoPuff, and these services are incredibly successful. And lastly, Broadcast.com, I guess, one of the first streaming companies in the world in the .com era, and then it was acquired by Yahoo, but it was shut down 3 years later. Today, you got Netflix and Spotify, legendary companies that have the same premise, basically, but it's all about timing. And if you go to the next slide. And I think there are three things to think about when you're thinking about timing. The first is the technological readiness of today's world. So some ideas may make a lot of sense on paper, but they're not really feasible without some enabling technology. So take Webvan and Cosmo. Customers were able to place orders online. There was no way to effectively support the people picking up and delivering the orders without smartphones. All of the sort of the internet, cloud computing, mobile technology, and GPS, stuff like that, that was pretty important for a service like Webvan. Consumer behavior, so a new business needs a market that's ready for it. So shifts in consumer habit or behavior driven by technological change can be a big part of why the time is right for a new startup. For example, the Instacart, Chewy, DoorDash, so on, they leveraged the enabling technologies that were available to them, but they also benefited from the widespread trust in online transactions that had developed among consumers by the time they appeared. And lastly is the economic rationale. I think, for broadcast.com, it didn't make sense for them to stream when that technology costed a lot of money. And with advancements, in bandwidth, that cost for streaming was very different 10 years ago, or 20 years ago than it had been like 10 years before that. And that change made Netflix and Spotify and other streaming platforms really accessible, and it's viable. So think about those two things. Competition. Many of you might think about the idea you're starting and think of the giants, maybe like you're, I don't know, like trying to start a peer-to-peer delivery service at school or something, and you think of Instacart and DoorDash. Those are giants facing you, right? And honestly, like, don't let that deter you. When thinking about the competition, I think worrying that you're late is a good sign usually. Even if you find someone else working on the same thing, you're probably not too late. It's really rare for startups to be killed by competitors. It's so rare that you can almost discount that possibility, unless you could discover someone with sort of a lock-in that would prevent users from entirely choosing you. But because in some ways you're creating a new market, like Airbnb. Nobody was they're renting out bedrooms and stuff like that. So when you're thinking about it, my suggestions would be to approach it from an informational asymmetry standpoint. So it should be the rule that there are competitors, and it's not the exception. If you can think of it, that probably means someone else had thought it and at least tried it before. But you all have some sort of informational asymmetry, meaning you have a set of experiences and working experience, maybe, or things you learn in class at school that is different from other people, and that is the sort of the number one advantage that you all have. Conversely, if you already know what they know about their product and their market, because it's already out there and you can analyze it. So that's also an advantage to you. And if products already exist, think about how to differentiate yourself, right? Make it cheaper, target a more premium market, make it work faster, or reorganize it into something that's more incentive efficient, something like that. So something like case studies. Prime, you all know Prime, the cheese snack on campus. So our partner Ralph, he actually interviewed the Prime founders, and they basically repurposed the rinds of 100% authentic imported Italian Parmigiano, and it's often sort of overlooked as a byproduct. By utilizing this underappreciated part of the cheese, they reduce operating costs significantly, and that allows them to offer a more premium savory snack at the same time at a much more lower price. Olipop, there's a video. I'll play that. You just click on the Olipop link. 431.
For over 10 years, Ben Goodwin and David Lester had a mission to make a component to Olipop's formulation process was achieving similar flavor profiles as iconic soda brands, but with a much healthier nutrition label.
I've always been really excited to make sure to meet the actual customer need for the flavors they grow up drinking. We want to make sure that we match their expectations for the traditional soda experience.
As the formulation came to a close, they still needed to figure out branding, as well as a name for the product.
Sorry.
So this way or
back to
where am I?
all the way up to no. Yeah, that's good. So same flavor but healthier, right? They're making the same flavor profiles of, say, Coca-Cola or root beer, but it's much healthier. So that makes them stand out. So the lesson is sort of don't let early haters or competition deter you from the idea. I think rejection is part of the process, but listen to customers' feedback, listen to other people's feedback when you're building the idea. Okay, so many of you have already got an idea. Some of you are already building it, right? So you might wonder what you should do next. So do you make a website? Do you make an app? Do you do early customer surveys? Do you interview potential customers? Does your MVP, I need to have all the features that you want. What features do I need? These are all questions that are very confusing if you don't have I think a structured way to approach it. It's very confusing. So what we think you should do, and take it with a grain of salt, but you should launch something quickly and iterate. So get initial customers, talk to customers and get feedback, and iterate, so improve on that product based on what the customer feedback is. What you shouldn't do is surveys and user interviews, because first of all, they're distractions because they don't highlight the most important part about the most important point of an MVP. Because what happens is you only start learning about your user when you put a product in front of them. Customers are experts in their problem, but they don't have all the answers to actually building that product out. That's your job. So I think surveys help you understand their pain, but it's not going to inform you of what to build. So this picture is, so he's got hair, his head is on fire. So the point is like, what could solve that problem? Get a bucket of water, dump it on their head, and that's the product, right? So that immediately solves the pain point, is that your head's on fire. So use that sort of framework, I guess. So don't, these fears will come up, like, oh, what if people don't like my product? You can always reach out to someone else. You can always go back to the same customer after you've iterated. It's this fear is not real. It's not going to change anything the next day you wake up. And don't be a fake Steve Jobs. And what I mean is that, like, he launched the iPhone and everyone's like, wow, this is the best product ever. But look at where iPhone is now. I think it's iPhone 16. It's the 16th iteration of the iPhone. They've got billions of customers, but they're still iterating, right? It's like the first iPhone was terrible, became great with iteration. Lesson here is to find a small niche of customers who really love or are desperate for your product. We're already early adopters of this field, and they're okay with products that work only sometimes because they are actually your customers if they're willing to use a scrappy and terrible product. So this is Airbnb in the early days. I hate this font, it's a terrible font. It couldn't accept payments. It did not have a map view, so you couldn't see where the listings were. It required homeowners to actually have an airbed in order to offer the service. And it was only for conferences. So say a conference was being held in Chicago, and then the service would come online, and then after the conference ends, Airbnb would not exist. So I think those are pretty ridiculous, and if it operated like that until today, I mean, it wouldn't work, right? So the point is, like, you have to be very scrappy and target the cases that it works early on. This is Twitch. I don't know how many of you use Twitch, but Twitch was started by Michael Siebel and this guy named Justin. You can see it's just one channel in the early days of Twitch. I think he's sleeping there. It's terribly low res, the video quality. There are no video games, and it was extremely expensive to stream, like we talked about before. So, but yet they still made it work. They still built the concept out. Lastly, you've got Stripe. Stripe is, if you use any sort of online transactions, you've definitely encountered Stripe. So they didn't do any bank deals. Founders were, so they weren't collaborating with banks. Founders were doing the paperwork in the background, so they didn't have any system to do the paperwork. And they had very few features. Even Twitch couldn't use it. It was only early YC companies who adopted it, and all they wanted was simple credit card payments. And because they needed that ease of use in terms of credit card payments, they had to adopt Stripe, even though it was really crappy and it looked like that. Some tips for your MVP, and we'll talk about it more in the next lecture, is to time box your spec. And what that means is set a time for how long you intend to build out your first iteration of your product. Write out the spec. So what are the minimum features? How should it look and work? Just so you don't think of a brand new feature and try to add it, and that'll maybe take you another 2 weeks. So time box it, and then write out your spec. And then cut your spec. So is this a feature? Ask yourself if this is a feature you're like a truly desperate customer would value and use. And don't fall in love with your MVP. It's not going to look good. It's going to look really terrible, and it'll be very different as you iterate. But love your customers. Next slide. Yeah, and then it's Q&A. All right. Yeah, people have questions?
Should we go through a practical example of like a U Chicago startup and then like
If you want to.
I mean, like, I think, can I like quickly go over
Yeah,
this?
go for it.
Sure.
So like, I think a really cool example.
Talk here.
Gotcha. Can this
Do you
get
want to
dragged?
share?
Yeah, I'll like you just drag
Oh,
it.
do you want
So like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Perspectives Health, Purple Recovery. So they're a startup started by like Nick and Ishans. They're like third and fourth year, or both fourth years. They just dropped out and raised like 600K from San Francisco, and now they're going like full send and doing their startup. If you bring them back to like this process, I remember talking to them it was like early this year, like last year, like mid last year. One of them had worked at the White House and one of them was like an army medic. So they were really passionate about like substance abuse and like intake systems. And so one of them had worked this like substance abuse intake clinic and realized that the big pain point, so like when Colin's mentoring pain point, wherever it was, but like this image of like someone's hair on fire, like in a substance abuse intake center, the hair on fire problem is intake. Like it takes 3 or 4 hours for like say Eric was coming into my like addiction recovery center. If I'm the intake professional and Eric's coming in, it takes me like 3 or 4 hours to triage him. Like I have to ask him questions like, what drugs have you been on before? Like what steps have you taken? Like what's your like psychological state? And so all these like tiny little miniature questions you're asking to figure out how to match Eric with like maybe Colin, who's this like intake person who does and gets matched with you. And so that was the hair on fire problem, right? And the way they knew it was, if we go all the way back here, they knew it from they knew it from approach 1, basically, right? Like, but they also refined it through approach 2. So their like personal like conviction about what they were experiencing informed that. And then 2 is like, once you know you have an idea in the space. So they knew that like intake was a major problem and they really wanted to fix it. So they like worked in an intake center. They like went there for like 2 months and they were like, fuck, like what do we do? And like, how do we make this better? I don't know if I can find like their actual website now. Can I use this to look around? They developed like an MVP, which was, oops. Oh, this is yours, sorry. I won't show the website, but they're like MVPs, their first product. They sold, I hope they don't mind me telling this, they sold it and they got their first MVP customer without having like a working product. Like they didn't know it was going to work for the intake professionals. And that's Colin's thing about like being scrappy and selling in. They sold in and got their first pilot customer without even having a proper product. And then they refined it around like the needs of like Eric and Colin, right? Like imagine Eric's this like recovering addict, right? So I guess like the TLDR of this too is you can have like a personal connection to a space you want to build in, right? Like I know Gil, you were talking about politics, right? He wants to build in politics because that's what he knows. Build in a space maybe that you know, but then refine like Purple Recovery did, refine it around like the specific needs. So we're trying to think if I know an example of something they refined.
Talk about Belly with the
Belly, yeah.
with their switch to like different packaging.
Oh,
right?
do you wanna
So
talk
from the
about that?
drink.
Yeah,
Well,
talk about
the
that.
problem is that like for people with do you guys all know what Belly is? So Belly was started by a student here, Oliver, who graduated last year, who had a bunch of problems with irritable bowel syndrome. So he suffered from IBS and wanted to make a drink that would work for him, that would be able to help him basically feel better about his IBS. And so for a long time, what they did was they did canned drinks, where you would go to like Hyde Park Produce, you would pick up the drink, and you would like a Poppy or an Olipop, and you would buy it. And so that was the original idea, and they still sell it.
And they taste really good.
Yeah, they're good.
They're good.
But they weren't like.
They went
Because
flying off
they-
the
yeah.
shelves, yeah.
Yeah, because they were pinpointing, they cared more about the customer than like the drink, right? And so because of that, what they realized was the best way that they could package this was actually in a powder substance, right? So whatever it is the nurture fiber, right? So instead of having the drink, you now have a package like this that you can send to someone's home directly. And they were able to come up with something like this because they were in, like, the way I think about it is like be in love with the problem, not the solution. Because as you are iterating, you're going to get so many things wrong about the solution, and the only way to know is to care more about the problem than any sort of like project that you have on the way you think it's going to get better.
Yeah, and like Eric's point too is that like with the herbal tea, like maybe Oliver, because the whole point of this is that I think it uses what is it? It's
Human
like
milk?
human milk,
Yeah.
right? Like the product of human milk, or like the specific enzyme or something inside of it.
Yeah.
And Oliver would want to buy this every single week, and that's why he made it, right? But normal people don't buy subscriptions for like bottled drinks. So he was like, you know what? People buy subscriptions for like protein powder. And so why not buy prescriptions for prebiotic superfood? And so this is much more like medically appealing. And like that's his whole point about pivoting to this too. So build around the customer.
Yeah.
Like there's a famous, like we mentioned like YC, this like crazy cool startup school. That's where like Ben went to. I forgot who said it. There was this podcast, and there was a company that got into YC for like a really specific, I think it was like an AI coder or something. This is like a few years ago, or like something like that, like some random company. And they got into YC. They're about to present a demo day, and they realized like, fuck, our idea is really bad, and like no one wants to use it, but we have to demo. And so what they did is they went out to like try and find a new product and like ideate. So they went to truck stops in the US, and they sat down with truckers. They like had no idea about the trucking industry. They sat down with truckers, and they were basically like, what are your problems? Like, what is like the worst thing on your mind? Like, what's the hair on fire problem? Developed a solution around that, presented it at demo day, and now this like $100 million company. So the TLDR is like build around your customers and like refine around your customers, and just like be scrappy, right? Like Oliver did the first batch run of this. He didn't used to have cans. He presented at CNBC with like bottles that he'd
they
like
were, like
used,
plastic bottles.
ripped off the tags of, and then printed a thing on it and gave it to the judges. So be scrappy, find your customer, build around your customer, and then like, yeah, if there's someone who is wanting to pay for your product, you can build it to them and then scale, right? That's like the big deal.
But that's we're getting hard on ourselves for the next lecture.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yes, yes.
That's just I know some of you have to go on everything. So
Yes.
Um,
That's also belly. Okay.
do people have immediate questions?
Yeah. Or how we can help you too.
Yeah. Is there something from workshop maybe?
Sorry.
Is there like showing your workshop?
Yeah, wait, are we comfortable like going around the room and like talking about our ideas? Is that alright? Maybe. Okay. We'll start. Okay. So what's your like idea, and if you were to give like a Twitter pitch on like what you want to build?
Just here, you have the
Yeah.
format basically for.
Oh yeah.
It's right at the end. Yeah.
So.
So like, I think about, who's your like ideal customer who you'd be selling to, or who'd be using your product, I guess. Yeah.
So I don't have
Sorry
anything
for you on the spot.
reversed.
No, you
but,
don't have to, you don't have to.
Amanda and I are working together on a wellness e-commerce platform. The person that we really think we can target with this company is like 35 to 60-year-old women.
Yeah. And then how did you come to that? Like, what made you realize it's 35 to 60-year-old women? I know these probably sound
We
like
did
stupid
tweak
questions.
it because
Okay.
it started as like a personal problem, and then in talking to people and researching and building it, we realized that although we might be interested in it, we're not necessarily the typical 22-year-old, and it is probably better suited towards an older market, even
Yeah.
though there will still be people like us interested.
Yeah.
And this is like exactly what we're talking about, right? It's a great example of the ideation, which is like you guys were trying to solve a problem that you had,
Yeah.
and then realized, oh, there were a lot of people that are really interested in what we're building, right?
Yeah.
But it's because you knew from yourself, like you weren't trying to solve like a market need. It was just like, I have a problem and I really want to fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we feel like no one is really talking to us as far as like a supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like big box retailer, but then realized really no one is talking to older women.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
kind of got through it that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Who is your like ideal customer?
I see.
Yeah.
So I was back home in Florida. I was talking to like my friend, and like his little cousin came over, and he's like 5 years old or something, and he just started like spouting all this like brain rot stuff about like really delicious.
Have you seen the Italian brain rot yet? No.
Dude, I don't.
I'm a deep TikTok.
But like,
Not bad.
like this little kid just kept talking about like Riz and Aura, just like it's just like why does he know that? This is like it's unhealthy, and then, you know, this like it keeps going to the next generation's like brain or something, right? So like, but something that like, you know, all these like software engineers at like TikTok do is that they maximize like retention on their app because it's short form content. They use the color red. They have it to a science on how to like keep people on their app for as long as possible. So like that's good and in theory, but like it could work for kids. But like instead of like brain rot content, it should be educational. So,
Anti-brain rot.
Anti-brain rot. So what if like, and I truly think like simple stuff like algebra 1 or like even like elementary school math, you can teach it through brain rot. So like with like how Cocomelon like is so addicting to kids, you just put that into like an educational style content. So like in the form of like Duolingo, like short form videos. After like 3 videos, there's like a interactive little quiz or game you play to like learn what you applied. If we could get kids on this and they like spend like all day on like this instead of like watching Instagram reels and stuff like that, then it could be something really cool.
Yeah, and that's it's like you got a personal pain from someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it's gonna be cool but hard because it's gonna be. This is not saying don't do it. It's saying 100% do it, but like when your customer is like kids, like figuring out and testing the product around them and like refining it, that's gonna be cool. You know what I mean?
I think
That's awesome.
the customer is the kid, but like for who to like actually like get the kids to use it, that have to be like parents and like maybe like school teachers and stuff like that in the class to get in the classroom. But
That'd be awesome.
appreciate it.
Are you working together now? Yeah.
So we're doing like an experience, like pop-up kind of thing. So it's like a almost like a rage room like situation for like college students for like when midterm or finals week comes around, and you have this really massive urge to like write all of your problems on a plate and break that plate. So like we're still workshopping like what we actually want to include and how it's gonna get set up. Like a way to like let out some pent up anger or like just take a break and like have like an experience.
Yeah. And I guess like this is curiosity too. Like how would you like validate that? Like how would you validate how many people want to use something like that? Or like
we
where
just
to
have to do it. Like just
Yeah.
set up like a little
A rage
table
room.
and like set up a table in like the quad and be like, would you like to like smash this hammer into this glass
Yeah.
for like $1 in the
rent out a red room starts.
Yeah.
Okay. No, see, I think it's true, but it's probably like a personal pain, and then you're seeing it in other people as well, right? Like
Yeah, and also like like they have like the trends on like at least like writing down all of your problems on a plate and breaking it. Like I saw that on like Instagram Reels, and I was like, wait, because at this point I'm like, it's winter, it's finals week, I'm sitting in the reg, and I'm like, I really want to do that right now, but I can't.
So I would have done that last quarter. I wish I wish I had it.
And there's validation too, right? Like just the number of people that do the primal screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
We'll set up the tent like right next.
Exactly. And I presume it's probably a problem where it's like at U Chicago more so than other schools. Which is interesting. But yeah. How about you?
Do you want to
Oh,
add anything
so
about
you're working there.
Do you want to add anything about being a problem? Or
Yeah.
I guess a specific part I'm working on right now is like the recommendation platform for it, which is more so like less the accessible, or I guess more the accessibility part where it's like people don't know what they're putting in their body, people don't know what they're taking, what fix their problems. Like the example I use is I had like my hair was falling out for ages and I had no idea why, and I was just like, I guess this is just part of my life now, and not knowing that like a simple pill like supplement could fix it. Like I'd go to doctors and they'd be like, oh, like just suck it up, whatever.
Really?
Yeah. But you know, you go tell way more of your life story and your history to like somebody who specializes in like supplement focused medicine, natural medicine, and your problem gets solved, which is something that I was very uncomfortable doing. I didn't want to tell my life story to a random, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the way to get that. So I'm working on something that's a little less like.
Yeah. It's like personal too, right?
Yeah.
Like it comes from something. Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
In terms of the people selling it to, I think probably I'm going to go to like small and mid-sized political consulting firms that want to increase the offerings they give to their clients, because you know, they might be working with campaigns where huge polling budgets aren't really in the picture, and so working with a pollster who needs to make enough money to cover payroll or whatever isn't feasible. But if they can run a poll themselves, they get to increase their customer base by providing more services, make more money, and their campaigns their clients can also have better strategy informed by data.
Yeah. And it is literally like a hair and fire company, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
people are already doing
everything they can.
And getting people. How much? What was the number you told me? Like 16.
Just for like a sample size 400 poll, 40 grand to 60 grand.
Yeah. So like the startup is like, oh, would you want to give like a backstory on like?
Oh yeah, I mean I just want to
overall
build a AI pollster, because right now you pay humans with a lot of experience to make educated guesses about who's likely to vote, and it's fine because everyone is doing it the same way. You don't have to be good; you just have to be less bad than the other guy to win. And then like that's it, right? Because you won your election, and the next person who comes along is like, how do I win an election? They're going to do the same thing that you did, and so there's not really an incentive to innovate. And smaller campaigns that aren't raising millions of dollars can't afford to drop 40 grand to get data. And using AI agents to write surveys and then conduct interviews with voters, you can seriously reduce costs and make it much more accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah. And do you not pushing it tiny bit, but like digging a bit? How do you like come to the not come to the pain, but like how do you realize that there is a gap here?
I've worked with like a ton of political campaigns, mostly in the Bay Area, from like the city council level to the congressional level, and I'm just like been on campaigns where there are like multi-million-dollar budgets and they run multiple polls and then all of the strategy is informed by data. And then I've worked on city council campaigns. It was just me, like a buddy, and the guy running for city council. And we're like, what do we think that people want to hear? And it's just like our intuition. Like sometimes we live in the cities, and then it's like pretty good. And then sometimes we don't live in the cities, and we're like, we've missed the mark before. Like I remember, there have been situations in the past. I mean, one of the ways you can use polling is to track what people are hearing or thinking, right? So if someone's running a bunch of negative ads about you and you want to see the impact it's having, you could call up 600 people and say, what comes to mind when you think of candidate name? And if they say the thing that's in that, you know that's having an effect, and you might want to respond. And so, I've been in situations in these, small local campaigns where, like, we think, some people are, like, spreading rumors or whatever in a city of 30,000, so it's a small community, and we have no idea the impact it's having. And we cannot afford, the entire campaign budget's $60,000. We can't afford to spend 5 figures to answer that question. But if we can build a cheaper product, then we can have a smarter campaign.
Yeah. And I guess in that too is that, like, you're building a product that is literally, like, it's not only something you experience, but it's something you experience so deeply that, like, you become so frustrated with the current system that you decide to take it up yourself.
Yeah, like the biggest campaigns, like the presidential campaigns, that, like, are billion-dollar enterprises. They don't care if they need to spend $40,000.
Yeah.
They'll spend, like, millions of dollars on research and do, like, millions of interviews, and they can afford it. It's not a problem. It's just a question of those smaller down ballot races.
And I guess one thing worth saying as, like, a generalizable point as well is one of the advantages that you have of doing, like, a type 1, like, you find a problem that you're having and you fix it, is that you are going to run through walls to solve it in ways you would not run in to solve other problems. There's a really great story. If you was talking to us about this, I think I mentioned this to you last night in the car, but there was it used to be that when you were a pilot and you were getting allocated a flight to run, they would do it on an Excel spreadsheet. They would just give you a spreadsheet and they'd say, fill out your name and give it back to us. And most of the time, it just didn't work. Like, there was just so much overhead logistically that, like, people wouldn't get flights, they would get mismatched, they wouldn't get on the right flight. And so there was a pilot who, completely non-technical, didn't know how to code. He got so mad about it that he learned to code, wrote an app to fix it, and just started using it for himself. And it became the point where, like, he maintained it and more people used it, that he was able to sell it for, like, $10 million. And then he sold it, he went and traveled for a little bit, and then he became a pilot again, because he wanted to be a pilot to begin with. He didn't actually care about the business, he just wanted to solve the problem, and he was frustrated by it, right? But it turned out that it was a huge success. So, yeah, I think personally, always try to build for stuff that you're frustrated by, because you just have, it's such a different leg up that you have.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Thank you all. Office hours will be this Friday. We'll have a combination of in-person, but if you can't come, we have a Zoom too. Lecture 2 is next Monday, and then by Sunday night, I would like you guys to send me your first update. So I'll keep in mind 6 out of 8 weeks to get to the demo day. And yeah.
Yeah, and think about this. Think about Rosa. Yeah, think about this. Like
when you're submitting.
Yeah.
I'll send an email about it too.
Like, talk to people. Yeah.
Right.
Talk to people and see if it's an actual page. And then build around it.
Cool.